All right, so let's just say I want to make some changes to my touchp function in my .files repo. I don't quite recall where the file is at, so I can just search for it then, and I get back a few results here. Maybe I want to open up one of these and take a look at it here. So what I set up in iTerm, I can now click on this, and now this opens up a new window, and take a look at this. It's got Neovim opened up right to the file, and specifically on the line of the match here. So literally clicking on one of these files here opens up Neovim and jumps right to that line here, like line 117. So now I can make changes, and when I'm done here, I can then use F9 to close this, and then I'm brought back to the command line the shell where is at, and I could go on my merry way. Maybe I want to search for something else here now. Can find a different file this time, open up this file on line 24. You can see that jumps right to line 24 in this separate file. Make my changes there, etc. So basically what this is here, in iTerm, if I open up the preferences here, come over to my profile, over on the advanced tab here, there's an option for semantic history. It allows you to define basically a command or some other action that will execute when you click on a file in the output. So if I do like a tree here and just look at the very first level of a tree, if I wanted to open up this file right here, I could literally just hold down the command key and click on this. It'll invoke my action here, my semantic handler, which of course in my case maps to open up a new window with Neovim because that's my editor of choice. When I'm done, then I can just close the window by quitting out, and I'm brought back to the shell where I was at. So this is the semantic click handler in iTerm. You can define it here. If I scroll over, you can see there's a big long path here. Basically, it just takes me over to this script that I use here called mvim.fish. It's a fish script. And then I pass various arguments based on what I click on. So the name of the file, the path to it, that's passed into the script. So this pyproject.toml, actually the entire absolute path gets passed in. And then some other things are passed as well, like if there's a line number, that'll be passed as, I believe, the second argument. And then you get the working directory right on the end here. So you've got all the context you need then to act on the file that you clicked on. And in my case, I actually have a separate action set up here if it's a directory, like this folder right here. In that case, I don't use Neovim. Instead, I just open this up here in Finder. The inspiration for this too, by the way, this is what I had previously when I was using Visual Studio Code here. So I've got the exact same search as before. The only difference is this is wired up to a different semantic handler here. When I open this up, you can see this opens up to VS Code. Again, it jumps down to the right line here, the line of the match. And then I can go ahead and make my changes. And when I'm done, of course, I can quit out and come back to the command line. So that was the inspiration for what I set up here with Neovim. I love being able to just search for files and find something and then open it up and take a look at it. And of course, you could do something like copy a path here. And of course, you could then call Neovim and pass the path. But that's one extra step that you don't have to do here with the semantic handler. And that's why I love this so much. It's just so easy to open up a file and take a peek at it, close it out, and come back to doing whatever I was doing here. Now, as far as the implementation is concerned, if you're curious about that, out in my .files repo out on GitHub, I've got the files here. It's inside of this directory. And so if I did something like a tree here, I could be lazy and I could click on the file that implements my handler here, open it up. All right, so here's the file. It's basically a fish script. This is the entry point. If I scroll down here, you can see there are various different parameters that are passed. These are the arguments. I essentially parse them into variables here so that I know which variable is which from the various arguments that are passed to the handler. I also dump out the arguments for troubleshooting. That's not necessary though. And then this first block here looks to see if it's a directory with the test command. If it is a directory, that's when it opens it up with Finder then. So if I wanted to, I could comment this out here, save that. And then if I do a tree here again, one level deep, now when I click on one of these folders here, you can see this actually opens up a window, opens it up right to my tree view with mvim tree here, pointed at the exact file that I clicked on. All right, so I'll undo that though, because I prefer the directories to open up in Finder. And then next up here, I take a look at the MIME type. If it's a PDF, then in that case, I just open it up with the macOS open command. So it opens it up with my default PDF viewer. So something like preview. Same thing with images here. I open that up with the default handler. And then down below, here's where the magic happens. So first up, I grab what I call the workspace root here. Essentially, it's just your repository root in most cases, unless you're not in a repo, then it's just the current directory or the working directory. So I parse that off of the working directory that is passed to this script that represents a directory inside of which the user clicked on a file. And then next up, the bulk of this is now inside of this mvim py script, which uses the iTerm Python API to be able to open up a new window, run the Neovim command, etc. I then pass basically all the same arguments onto that script. And then I check and make sure that it actually worked. If it didn't, I exit with an exit code of 1 here so I can get some debug output. I'll show you what that looks like actually here. If I uncomment this last line and exit with a non-zero exit code here in the semantic handler, if I were to click on a file now and open it up, in this case, I get a little pop-up here from iTerm that says the command failed and asks me if I want to look at the output here, so I could do that to troubleshoot it. So I get the output here. You can see dumping the various arguments way at the top of that script, so I could troubleshoot and make sure I'm using the correct argument, etc., or fix whatever problem happened here. So I'll comment that out though. And then if I jump into this Python script here, first up, I'm just setting the variables for the arguments, just like in the script here. And then I go about the process of essentially getting access to the current session for the current pane inside of iTerm so that I could then copy some of the details of that, like the font size, for example. Not that important, but I find it to be a nice touch to match the font size. And then basically I'm setting up a profile for what's going to run here. I set things like the custom working directory. Again, that's going to be the workspace root or the repository root. And then I match the font size of the current window. I set up the columns and rows to effectively maximize it. I need to look into how I can do that without just overshooting the values, but that works right now. And then down below here, after a bunch of comments that I left myself, here's where I build up the command here to call Neovim and pass the path that was clicked on. And then I got some code here to build up the path. That's not important. I just need to add some things to the path that wouldn't be there otherwise. I go ahead and then take that command down here. If there's a line number, I add plus with the line number, which will open it up then to that line. And then I basically just run the command, and that's really it. So down here, this is where I create the window. I pass the command to it via this profile customizations. This has the command inside of it. It's set up here. And so yeah, iTerm takes care of the rest. It opens up a new window, runs that command that I provide, and that's how I have Neovim then.